Okay, well, let's get these components out of the box again, which I've already opened once. Won't need the case, just the PCB and the components to mount on the PCB. Put that aside, and for this I'll be using a printed circuit board holder to assemble the components on the board. Okay, ready to go. Next, the capacitors. Well, this is the completed printed circuit board with all the components mounted no major problems. Just a few notes that might help you that I found in building it. First of all, the ground pads are directly connected to the ground plane, so you're going to need quite a hefty soldering iron to get those to solder. I found a 25 watt soldering iron was fine, but a 15 watt wasn't. So that's that. Then also you'll find that underneath this sense antenna, about here, there's a couple of pads that are directly beneath the sense antenna, and I thought there was a little bit of a risk of them shorting out on the casing of the sense antenna, even though it's got a sleeve over it. So I've stuck a little bit of extra padding between the board and the sense antenna to prevent that happening. I did find it took me quite a time to work out how to fit this nylon cable to secure the ferrite rod. As it stands, it's not that secure, but you'll find when you put it into the casing, everything locks up, and the ferrite rod is nice and secure then, so that's okay. So other than that, no other problems I can think of. Okay, well, now time to test the receiver to see if it works, and for that purpose I've attached a temporary battery lead so I can power it up with an external power supply. So let's go ahead and do that. And of course we need to insert the headphone jack, in this case a speaker jack, into the socket to switch it on. And the receiver sounds very quiet, but I can hear some audio hiss, so I know something is working. So I have actually done this all before to tune the receiver to the correct frequency band or frequency range, which is 3.5 to 3.6 megahertz. So I'll just briefly repeat what I use to do that. I use a signal source, the MFJ 695, but you could use maybe a GDR or something like that, or you could even use a receiver to pick up the VFO oscillator, which when doubled in this coil here should be exactly the same frequency as the frequency you want to receive. Anyway, because I've had the MFJ, that's what I chose to use, and you will find when you first switch this on that the receiver is way out of the frequency you want to receive, and nothing is peaked, so it will feel as if it's dead, but it's just has at this stage very poor sensitivity, so you need a reasonable signal to be able to pick it up when the receiver is not peaked up. So tune the VFO tuning control to about midway, like so, and then we switch on our signal source. And the receiver is picking up a signal at 3.9 megahertz, which is way out of the band. We want something like 3.55 at mid band. Okay, so let's adjust this VFO core here to a bit lower. .8 was still too high. That's more like it, 3.56. Well, that would do for now. Then we need to pick up this VFO output coil. There we go. That will do. And also the antenna coil. Okay, much better. And then of course you'll need to check that you've got the right frequency range. But for now that's good enough. I can now hear some radio noise from the speaker here, so everything is working okay, and first time as well. So let's go ahead and put it in the box, and then maybe we'll test it against my old PJ80 to see how it performs. Well, I've now completed my PJ80, or rather 3500D. Here it is. So how did the kit assembly go? Well, the PCB wasn't really much of a problem. Well, I did run across a little problem with assembling the PCB inside the case, and I found that the sense button here, so we got this plastic button which sits in front of a micro switch on the PCB, and that just was not working. It just felt like there was not enough movement in the button to get the micro switch to activate. So I had to do a little bit of a bodge. So this is what I did. As you can see, I distorted the inside of the button slightly, a little bit of heat, so that it put it a bit nearer the micro switch, and that now works fine. Now of course, if you do something similar, you do that at your own risk, but it is rather important that that sense button works, of course. Okay, well, what I'd like to do now is just compare the new model with the old PJ80, which I've had a long time. So size wise, there's not much difference. The old PJ80 is slightly shorter. The controls and the layout is very similar. I did a rough and ready check on the sensitivity of both receivers, and there's not really much to choose between them. That's not surprising, because I don't think the circuit has changed at all between the old and the new. Okay, a big difference for me is the sense antenna, which is now fitted inside the casing, so much more sturdy job. The old PJ80 used to cause me a lot of problems, because the sense antenna was folding like this, and it was always coming loose and flopping around and getting in the way of you handling the receiver. Although this sense button did cause me problems on the new model, it is much more comfortable to use. than the old one, which just had a push button switch, which was small and quite uncomfortable to use. So that's a bit of an improvement. Another improvement has been the inclusion of a proper battery box, so you can easily get out the batteries to change them, whereas on the old PJ80 you had to undo this screw and split the casing, so not very convenient. Now, a big problem I had with the old PJ80 was microphony, which is the terminology for the high gain audio amplifier in DC receivers, sort of picking up all sorts of noises as you handle the receiver or knock it or use the control knobs. Now, this particular one here was very bad with the tuning, lots of crackling. So if you pre-tuned this receiver, it was capable of receiving quite weak distant signals. Well, the problem was, if you didn't quite know where that transmitter signal was on the tuning dial and had to tune it, the noise by tuning this sort of drowned out any weak signals and you had no chance of finding it, so not very good. Now, on the new model, it doesn't seem to have the same problem. This is quite quiet. Now, that's probably because obviously the controls are much newer, but also I think this control potentiometer is of better quality than the original PJ80. I think it's an Alps. Anyway, only time will tell whether wear and tear on this tuning knob will cause you problems with microphony. Hopefully not. It's probably worth mentioning that microphony is something that you are likely to experience on any DC receiver, so it's not uncommon, but probably more of a problem on simple receivers like this. Okay, just one other aspect about both of these receivers is that they use a passive sense circuit, which means that when you want to take a sense reading, you've got to extend the antenna, which is a little bit inconvenient. Not only that, when you've got the sense antenna extended, or maybe forget to retract it, and you head off into the woods through some thick undergrowth, then there's a good chance you're going to bend it or break it. It just seems a little bit of a shame that with the addition of 2 or 3 components, they could have made this with an active sense circuit, which would have meant that you wouldn't need to have extended this very much or at all, because you've got 4 inches of antenna rod inside the case. So if there are any experimenters out there, it seems to me this is crying out for a mod to add an active sense circuit. Okay, well, that's the end of my extended review of the R3500D receiver kit. Hope you found it useful. I certainly enjoyed putting the kit together. It's a nice, inexpensive project and an easy way of introducing you to 80 metre ARDF. So why not give it a try? In the meantime, 73, and thanks for watching.